Your afternoons just got a new rhythm on QBS. Tune in as Al-Jahara Al-Suwaidi, Huda Walid and Chloe dive deep into today's social issues with expert voices and your questions. Real conversations, fresh perspectives. The Midday Show.
For as popular as the Myers-Briggs type indicator is, very few people have done the work to actually crack open the MBTI manual itself, including myself. So it won't be me doing the talking. ICF credentialed coach and personality types expert with me in the studio, Katie Mapondera. How are you?
So well, and super excited for this conversation today, Huda.
Coach Katie, what are personality types to begin with? And what got you into this field?
I love the question. Well, so I see personality types as a wonderful tool to be able to communicate better, understand better by having these rough archetypes, these rough categorizations of, people's tendencies in terms of how they think, how they feel, how they behave. I really love what you said a couple of seconds ago, where you talked about how even if you lived thousands and thousands and thousands of years, you couldn't possibly, identify every personality of every person that lives. And I think that's really important because, it's not that we're trying to put people into a box here.
Yeah.
It's more about having a sense of people's tendencies. And there are roughly 16 broad categories of how people tend to, as you said, take in information and make decisions.
And how long have they been 16 for? Wasn't there a certain time when people like you around the world got to sit together and say, we might have to remove some and add new ones?
No, it's
time. I mean, I'm kind of wondering.
No, it's a great question. I mean, it's actually Catherine Meyer and Isabel Briggs who in the mid approaching late 1900s came up with this wonderful framework just to simplify and make more accessible the idea of these personalities. So the Myers-Briggs, the MBTI, hasn't been around that long, but that being said, I can tell you from my own personal experience, it's a really powerful framework just to help making sure you understand what is the language that the other person you're talking to is speaking? How are they thinking? How are they receiving what you are saying?
Now, we'd like to give the audience a brief on the MBTI personalities. How would you explain that with the simplest of terms for all of us to comprehend?
Well, us being, on QBS Radio, I would like to use the analogy of a radio, actually. Okay. So if we can imagine that each one of us is a radio with 4 stations. We have 4 stations in this radio. And each of those radio stations have different levels of strength of the signal. So we're going to tend to want to use the radio station that has the best signal strength, right? Because we'll hear most clearly, we'll get the information coming through most clearly. And so in the context of a human being, that strongest radio station is what we call our hero function. It's the way that we move in the world most effectively and most strongly. And we generally have, you so beautifully touched on these in your introduction. We have these 8 different spectra through which we tune into the world. It's whether we are more, as you said, whether we're more sensing types or intuitive types.
Yeah.
It's whether we
Can't we be a blend of both? Is it always an either or situation?
I love the question. We actually can do everything. Okay. Personality is more about tendency. And we sometimes need to lean into tendencies where we're not as strong. And it can be a very good thing.
Would it be a sacrifice for you to survive coping with people around you?
That's a good question. What I've found is that it's actually quite important. It's quite important to develop our ability to use our weaker aspects. The truth is, it does make us tired. It makes us tired when we use parts of our personality where we are weak. At the same time, if we are not proactive about using them, life calls upon a person to be versatile, and you need to be able to lean into those weaknesses from time to time, but just to do so with volition. It's not that we live there, but we do so with intention when required.
Intention is very important. How does understanding personality types improve our self-awareness and understanding of others in relationships?
Yeah, well, so the personality types give us a sense of our strengths, perhaps areas that we may be afraid of and need to confront. And as well, what those things are in other people. So
what if you're facing a person who does not like confronting because of how unreal they are?
Yes.
Yeah, they'd make you feel like it's Judgment Day. You don't want that to come.
No, I really appreciate the question. I love what there's an author I love. Her name is Louise Hay, and she says, when you walk a mile in someone else's shoes, you understand why it is they do the things that they do. And this is where personality types can be so helpful, is because, when we don't understand where someone else is coming from, we can
Well, it depends on how much access they give you.
True. That's true. Yeah, no, that's a very fair point. And there is so much information available to us when we're aware of what to look for. It could be as simple as, how does a person sit quietly in the room? They may not even be talking. There's a lot of information we can capture from just a person's way of being in a space.
Sometimes a person's response is just not responding. That could be where the silence is coming from.
Absolutely.
And it could be from a place of wisdom and not them not having a response. It could be from a place of self-respect and respecting the people sitting down there, sitting with the person.
Absolutely. They may be a type that is more one to observe the room as opposed to drive what's happening in the room, So there's so much you can take from that person sitting quietly.
Yeah. And Coach Katie, can recognizing personality differences increase something like empathy and lessen conflict in our connections to others?
Definitely think so. Because
how's that so?
The personality types tell us about how another person takes in information. So that is literally sort of the cheat code to how to speak to people so that they understand. Earlier you touched on the cognitive functions, and we talked about how we have maybe more thinking dominant types versus more feeling dominant types. Potentially when you're talking to someone who is more feeling dominant, you may speak the language of what is the impact on other people, what is the impact on them and how they will feel. We're thinking dominant types. We may speak the language of thinking more, the language of logic, the language of impact from a practical perspective.
In the case of these 16 types of personalities that we have, Coach Katie, would opposites attract in most cases?
Yes. I mean, okay, there are different schools of thoughts about this. There are different schools of thought, and it also definitely depends on each person's level of development. So we would say, for example, we talk about, the cognitive functions. Let's say we talk about an introverted feeler and an extroverted feeler being opposites in the sense that one is introverted or one's extroverted. Depending on the two people involved, they actually may work really well together and complement each other really nicely, because an extroverted feeler would tend to absorb the feelings of the introverted feeler. They tend to hear the values of that introverted feeler as a way to determine what they think is the right thing to do. And in vice versa, the introverted feeler may really appreciate someone who is very empathetic and receptive to hearing their values and absorbing what it is that they are feeling and what they have to say. But on the flip side, if you have maybe less developed individuals or maybe less empathetic individuals in those two categories, they can annoy each other. Because an extroverted feeler might seem to the introverted feeler to be too easily bent to the will of other people's feelings and other people's thoughts, and not strong enough
to be validated, you mean, and accepted?
Exactly, potentially to be validated and accepted, and also to live within their values. They may feel like that person is too focused on others, as opposed to having those core intrinsic values that can be relatively fixed for an introverted feeler. That makes sense.
I mean, it does make perfect sense. In the case of people wanting to know if this person would be their right life partner, to decide whether they can continue living together or not. Because in so many studies, they would say that the first 6 months is when both sides would tend to bring out the best in them. And if you exceed those 6 months, true colors start coming out because of the many situations that you start facing together. So life puts you to the test. Would in this way people have to come to people like you to take a look at their personality types and see if they can be compatible or not?
Well, before
they take on the decision?
Well, I personally, now not all personality experts see it this way, but from my perspective, I really believe that any two personalities can get along well, provided they are willing to develop and grow and step into maturity. And I like this particular definition of maturity. It comes from Stephen Covey, where he talks about, and I'm roughly paraphrasing here, and he talks about how maturity is the ability to have both courage and compassion. So the courage to tell the truth and be blunt and speak up for yourself, and at the same time, the compassion to do so in a way that takes into account how your courage lands, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I really think, any two personalities, I think by and large, if they are willing to step into maturity, into growth, they have access to, more ways of showing up for each other in ways that are supportive. That's how I see it. That being said, I should say, other personality experts would argue that, or might argue that, you do want to have those complementary functions, like you were asking me about earlier, where let's say you have the introverted feeler with the extroverted feeler, the introverted thinker with the extroverted thinker, so that they're really able to absorb each other's contributions, to the world in terms of the style of how they think and work. And for sure, those can be, great dynamics to have. They just don't guarantee compatibility. I think what is a stronger support for compatibility is just that ability to show maturity and courage.
Sacrifice. There's always going to be sacrifices.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And at the top of my head, I was kind of wondering if a certain personality type, for example, would be found in a certain continent than another continent, or from a certain country than another country, because when people want to consider retirement, they want to live in a country where personality types are good enough and surrounded by is there something of this sort, like a study, findings, statistics?
Well, for sure, some of the testing platforms are collecting this data. They are collecting where are the respondents to the personality typing test located physically, and they'll actually allow you to see visually what is the largest concentration of certain personality types. For example, I have a friend who recently found that at least according to this particular testing platform, the largest concentration of INTJs were in Algeria, I think she mentioned. So I thought that was really fascinating. So yeah, there is data out there. There is the caveat though. There's a lot of debate about the quality of the assessments. Not all of the assessments have equal accuracy.
Okay.
So, big caveat there, but at least in terms of how people are being typed by these assessments, there is insight out there.
I mean, yeah, because if you look into visiting countries either for a visit or residing in a country, maybe you want to look into the majority of personality types of these communities before you consider relocating. Coach Katie, how can we tell which personality type we are? Is it that easy? Do we just go online, find a questionnaire, and there you go? That's my personality type? Is it that easy?
Well, look, I'll admit to my bias here. I think that a lot of the tests are not accurate. And part of that is because when we take these tests, we sometimes lie to ourselves.
To make us feel better?
To make ourselves feel better. You know, we may respond.
Well, can we consider that a white lie?
Well, we could. And whether we do consider it a white lie or not, either way, we may not get an accurate assessment of what our personality is.
Okay.
So, yeah. No.
So what do we do in this case? Know that this is just temporary pleasure and end up going back to a coach like your good self.
Well, you know, I'm a big fan of self-study. I'm a big fan of people learning about the cognitive functions we talked about.
The way we're doing right now.
Yeah, you could say that. This is a great starting point.
Are there any cognitive functions that you find people lacking nowadays?
You know, we actually all use all of the functions, maybe just some a lot more than others. You know, and I think each personality has access to all of the cognitive functions.
Does education play a field in enhancing one personality type more than the other, or encouraging this type of cognitive thinking more than another? Does that play a part?
Well, I think for sure a person's educational experience can inform the way they grow into their greatest self, right? And so education absolutely can play into whether a person is moving more into what we call their parent function, which is a part of their personality that they'll use more as they mature and as they become more responsible. Education also sometimes discourages certain manifestations, right? So, you know, I know when I was growing up in Zimbabwe, you know, the kids who were rewarded were the quiet kids. So for sure, introversion.
So if you were quiet, you were the best one.
Yeah, pretty much. If you were quiet, you were the best one. Speak when you're spoken to, being very controlled. So for sure, you know, preferring more of a what we call introverted sensing way of showing up to life. So introverted sensing is one of the cognitive functions. It has to do with more that internal, slow, methodical, detail-oriented, focused, memory-based way of being, which is extraordinarily powerful.
But life would be boring if you have a class, for example, in the case of your example, with a whole class full of introverted people. There would be some kind of imbalance. It would be odd. You want a bit of this and a bit of that to maybe have some balance? Isn't that the way it's supposed to be in life? Or workplace, at home, or...
Well, I really appreciate what you're saying, because yes, it is these differences, this rich tapestry of different ways of being that makes life interesting and makes it valuable. At the same time, I can see how the teacher who just wants to get through the hour may appreciate, you know, focus.
Just listen.
Listen. Yeah, exactly.
Coach Katie, in what ways can enhancing our communication-based personality types lead to better and more harmonious relationships?
I think it's all about being able to understand each other better, being able to understand ourselves, understand our triggers,
Maybe understand that there are differences?
For sure. Oh, that's huge. Understand that there are differences. Not everyone sees the world the way that you do. And if you can, step into their shoes for a moment and speak to them in the language that makes sense to them. Perhaps love them the way that they like to be loved. I think all of those things
combined.
Yeah.
That's such a huge world, Coach Katie. Let me ask a question here, coming in from an anonymous listener who reached out through WhatsApp, wanting to ask you a question. Coach Katie, what is the difference between being an introvert and an extrovert?
Oh, that's a fantastic question. You know, really important because the way that we talk about these words in the context of personality type is different than how it's generally used, in general conversation. When we talk about the MBTI, we're generally talking about, when we talk about introversion, we're talking about an internal focus. So just because a cognitive function is introverted, it doesn't mean that the person doesn't like to be around people. So a person may have a pretty dominant introverted hero function or strongest cognitive function that they like to use and still be highly social and highly interactive. It's really about what is the point of reference for that person. So let's take a very quick and simple example.
Yeah, please.
Earlier we talked about introverted feeling versus extroverted feeling. I am an extroverted feeling hero, which means my tendency is to make decisions based on what do other people feel. I have a high level of awareness about the feelings that are in the room. I will tend to just know what is the vibe like in here? How are people feeling? Is there tension in the space? I have a high level of awareness in that regard. Where an introverted, but at the same time, I'm a highly social person. I love people. I love being around people. So my extroversion there, but just because I'm extroverted though, it doesn't mean that I'm the life of the party necessarily. If you were to meet me at a party, you may potentially think I'm a little quiet, but I am an extroverted feeling hero. That's my strongest function. It's extroverted. Where an introverted feeler will have deep awareness of their own feelings, of their own values. Introverted feelers are highly authentic because they're very much in touch with who they are, in touch with themselves, and what's important to them. And you can have introverted feelers who are very social, So the distinction there is about, what is the point of reference when it comes to that particular aspect of the person. Does that make sense?
Yes. I mean, in my 45 years on this earth, I've never heard a better explanation. So thank you, Coach Katie.
Honored by that.
We have another listener here. Sarah would like to ask, how do I know which personality I am?
Yes. So Sarah, I would really invite you to learn about the cognitive functions and then watch yourself like a hawk. Learn about these functions, these 8 functions that we've talked about.
Would reading be enough to learn about these functions?
Reading can be a great way, and there's so many different resources. If you go on YouTube, there are so many amazing experts talking about the cognitive functions, just giving you those basics. Lots of really good resources to learn the basics of what do we mean when we say introverted feeling, introverted thinking, extroverted thinking, etc. What do we mean?
So can we type something on YouTube like MBTI personality types and just start from there?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
That's fantastic. You heard it from Coach Katie herself. We've got Rose here. And she'd like to know it says, how should people treat an ESFP at work? Well, hold on. What does ESFP stand for? What is it briefly?
Okay. So, yes. So there's a few parts to this question, starting with what you've said. What is an ESFP?
Yeah.
So the Myers-Briggs framework has these 4 letters. And the letters tell you what is the hero or the dominant function of the person that we're talking about. And it's also telling us what are the functions they use mostly in their ego. Are they mostly using their extroverted function as their hero function? And which of their 2 cognitive functions in their ego is introverted? So our ESFP, so what we know is that their perceiving function is extroverted. And we know that their extroverted function is their strongest function. So the ESFP is an extroverted sensing hero. That means that this individual is very good at at sort of mastery of the physical environment. They're good at physics, basically. Sometimes extroverted sensing heroes can be good at sports. Not always, but oftentimes they're good at sports. They could be good at fixing mechanical objects that require repair. They can be very, very perceptive about details in the physical environment. They'll tend to also be really good at giving a good experience, a good sensory experience. So they'll smell good. They'll be good at cooking food that tastes good. They'll be good at looking good. They'll be good at, creating a wonderful space in which to
That's
enter.
an exception. That sounds like an exceptional personality type.
Well, no, there are many wonderful extroverted sensors in the world, but the extroverted sensing hero tends to have a strong level of awareness in terms of the external environment.
So are you saying that this person wouldn't let anything pass?
They'll
just pinpoint at stuff?
They'll tend
unnecessary?
They'll tend to be pretty good at doing that because they live very much in the present. Now, there is a stereotype.
So they lack flexibility, you mean? Like they wouldn't let things pass because of...
Oh, I see what you mean when you say they wouldn't let things pass. I would say this. There is a stereotype that extroverted sensing heroes tend to be a bit hot-headed, that they tend to have short tempers. I can't deny that I've seen that extroverted sensing stereotype bear truth. So coming back to this person's question. So if they're an extroverted sensing hero, they tend to be an introverted intuition inferior. So what that means is they may have a tendency to either avoid or not be as strong in terms of planning for the future. They tend to really, really be one to live in the present a lot. They live in the present. They may either avoid the future or just don't care about the future, or be irritated by people who always want to talk about the future, irritated by people who want to plan potentially. But again, I mean, it's really important to understand the nuance here. Each person will...
So at work, would you say that this person would not even plan their future goals and live day by day?
Depending on how they've developed themselves, it may make them tired to be focused on the future all the time, I mean, again, this goes back to something really powerful that you mentioned, during the music break there, which is, how we are nurtured as children, how we are rewarded or punished based on how we show up in the world is important. So if we grow up in a context where being a planner is what everyone has to be, you'll sometimes see people, even though it's not their natural state, they will fight hard to lean into what the family, what the society finds acceptable. Yeah. So you could have a person who is an ESFP, really trying to lean into being a planner, and maybe even just being very drained by that because that's not their natural tendency. But I do want to make sure that I answered the caller's question. So their question was how to deal with an ESFP
at work.
So it sounds like there may be some challenges happening with that.
That's something I sensed the first thing I thought of when I looked at the question.
Right, so very perceptive.
Any top tips? Any useful ones?
Well, so I'm assuming I'm going to make up a story that potentially it's an unhealthy ESFP.
Okay.
Since the individual is talking about how to deal with them, I think it would be so wonderful if we could know the personality of the person asking the question, because that can also tell us what are some of the natural tensions happening. If we have someone who is an NI hero, an introverted intuitive hero, clashing with an extroverted sensor, it could be about that tension between someone being very much a planner versus someone who really just doesn't want to plan at all. If that's the source of the conflict,
then maybe the ESFP can rely on the introverted planner to do the planning.
Absolutely. See, this is the key here. Is that when we understand each other's strengths and weaknesses, we can start to...
Would that give them the right to take advantage?
I wouldn't say anyone has the right to take advantage. I hope that rather than taking advantage, we'd see it as an opportunity to support each other and be more mutually supportive, to recognize each other's strengths and call out each other's strengths.
Yeah.
So I'm sensing there's some nuance to that question that the caller sent in that I wish we could dig a little deeper with you to figure out what is going wrong with this ESFP from your perspective. And if it is...
The person has put in the effort to know that other person's personality type.
Right.
So you can make their lives easier.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm impressed. I'm impressed that you know that they are an ESFP. If they are indeed so. You know, so I mean, I think, you know, the stereotype can be sometimes that introverted feelers are selfish, which they are not necessarily. Maybe sometimes they are, as all of us can be unhealthily selfish.
Yes.
But introverted feelers, especially dominant introverted feelers, sometimes people make up a stereotype that they are a bit selfish. Now, if this individual is so, you know, it's really important to talk to people, to meet them where they're at, you know. So the extroverted sensor, potentially, you know, as Huda, as you're talking about, maybe the opportunity here is to take on the planning. If the problem is a tension between them not being willing to talk about future plans, maybe it means you need to be the one who is doing the future planning. If the challenge here is that you're noticing this person always brings everything back to themselves, you know,
or just critiquing everything that comes their way because of how much they pay attention to detail, as you mentioned earlier.
Potentially, right. It's just about understanding as well. This is not necessarily something personal. You know, this is not necessarily something personal against you. It's just about how does a person move through the world and really appreciating and recognizing the strengths in those qualities too.
Yeah.
You know,
that was so well answered, Coach Katie. One more question before we go back on a music break again. This listener says, hello, QBS Radio. I'm an INTP. And my question is, how can I improve emotional communication without feeling overwhelmed?
Well, first, I really want to acknowledge that INTP for even having that awareness to ask the question. A lot of INTPs just avoid discussions of dealing with emotions or feelings altogether. So that is huge that you're willing to even...
Is it because it comes from a place of maybe they'll take me as vulnerable? They'll take advantage of this emotional side of me. Is that where it comes from?
That's a great question. You know, there's a lot of debate about...
Or I don't like people seeing me in that vulnerable stage. What is it?
There's a lot of debate about where personality comes from. There's some, you know, it's the question of, is it nurture? Is it nature? What is it? So my short answer for you is I don't know. I don't have the answer yet on, and I suspect that there are many different factors that shape that.
So how can they communicate those emotional parts of their sides without the overwhelming side of it?
Well, so first of all, to be aware that leaning into the feeling side of yourself, it's true. It will make you tired. It will make you tired because it is your lowest function. So the key here is to use that part of yourself intentionally and periodically where it's needed, you know. So using that part of yourself with volition, as opposed to waiting until your TI hero has maybe hurt people's feelings and it blows up in your face, and now you have to
because if this person is an introvert, then it wouldn't be easy for others to tell how their emotions are going inside of them. So if you know that this person is an introvert, do you think that it's healthy for us to always check on them and ask them how they're doing?
That's a great question.
Something so that maybe they can start venting?
That's a great question. Actually, INTPs are quite expressive. They tend to be in roles where they are teaching, where they are...
Really?
Because they're so smart. They are learners by nature. So that introversion is something called introverted thinking, which is about, just having this huge thirst for learning, for creating logical frameworks. So an INTP is the type of person who can absorb very large amounts of complex information and organize it into logical frameworks. And they love to share that knowledge. They love to teach. So it's not that they don't express themselves. It's more so that they tend to stay in the realm of thinking and logic. So not as much touching on the emotional aspect. And so what I would offer is that it is a muscle to be built, to our dear INTP friend over there. And it's about practice. But to be clear, it's okay to be your wonderful self, your wonderful thinking dominant self.
Is it because they're too preoccupied and busy using their brains, doing what they're doing, and they're just neglecting emotions?
INTPs will have the tendency not to spend as much time in the feeling side of themselves. Yes, they will tend.
But that does impact your health and body, right? In the long run, doesn't it?
Potentially, yeah, potentially. I mean, what I've seen is most personalities, when they don't take the time to develop the weaker side of themselves, life will force them to bring that out at a time when they're
maybe a pet will force them to do that.
That's a great suggestion. Absolutely. That could be a wonderful way for the INTP to tap into their feeling self, is to get
whoever's asked this question. Well, thank you very much, because a lot of people can relate to that.
Yeah.
Definitely. We have an anonymous question here going out to you, Coach Katie. What cues or signs can help them notice when they're unintentionally disconnecting from others? Ouch.
Oh, that's a really, really great question. Well, first, I need to acknowledge you for asking the question. It sounds like just even having the awareness to ask the question. We say as coaches that the first step toward change is awareness. So I think it starts with you starting to practice noticing yourself, just noticing yourself. We talk about mindfulness practices. Mindfulness practices can be as simple as taking the moment to get present and just be with whatever you're doing, and to observe. And so I'd invite you to do that. You can also consider whether you invite other people to be part of that process, potentially people close to you. Maybe they can offer some feedback. So love the question. Do try those things on, and would be curious to hear how that goes.
Could it be because they're surrounded by particular personality types that they don't get along with? Would that be a sign? Is it them being more of the introverted side and wanting to recharge, so that allows them to disconnect? They escape, they travel, they come back, which is normal.
Potentially. No,
should they change their surrounding? What if they can change their surrounding?
No, that's a really, really important question. I think it would be worthwhile for this individual, if they don't yet know their personality type, to maybe dig into that and find out what is their personality type. Why do they do what they do? There's wonderful books coming out. In the past, people always talked about how, everyone wants to be an extrovert, but we now have a lot of great insight that introverts have so much value they contribute to the world. So it's not necessarily a bad thing.
You can be a bit of both.
Yeah,
by the way.
Absolutely.
And just be absolutely fine.
Yes, well, I mean, the personality types really honor what you've just said, acknowledging we all have an introverted function and an extroverted function in our dominant, personality type. And I say our dominant
because sometimes people might mistake it in a way. Let's say if you see someone who prefers solitude and me time as to them being in a sense of discomfort with their community or their surrounding. But no, this could be a personal preference. This is their style of living. This is their personality type. And that's how they move on with life.
Absolutely.
And other people find their satisfaction by being surrounded by people literally the entire time.
That's right.
Those are not wrong. Those are not wrong. It's just who they are.
That's right.
We've got Sophia here, Coach Katie. Her question goes, how do I know if I am an introvert or just shy to express myself?
That's a great question. That's a great question. Well, again, I would say I would really encourage you to learn about the cognitive functions, use those resources, whether you read a book or, use the resources on YouTube. Learn about the cognitive functions and then start to observe yourself. Yes, you can take the online tests with the caveat that they are not 100% accurate. I mean, some of them as much as 60% inaccurate, but they can at least give you some orientation. Let's put it that way, some orientation. So I would encourage you to find out a little bit more about your personality types. And I think it really does go into this aspect of nurture and nature, right?
Yeah.
So also interesting to maybe look back at your own personal journey and see what has shaped the way you are right now. What is it that has caused you to be shy? Where does that come from?
So it's not too late to be fixed, you're saying?
It's never too late. Well, and I think, again, it may not necessarily even be about fixing it. There may be some wisdom in that. So like you gave some great examples there of, how potentially a person just needs to go back and recharge their batteries. And others might be saying, oh, well, you're so shy and, what's wrong?
I can easily relate to that, Coach Katie. As much as I love people, which is why I am a radio host, basically, I do have the ultimate desire from time to time to disconnect and recharge and do what I like doing most whenever I go on holiday. And that keeps me going. Is that wrong?
No, absolutely not.
That's what I'm trying to say. We have Mo here wanting to know how you encourage introverts to engage in relationships, especially when they find themselves attracted to someone, and how you encourage extroverts to be a bit calmer. That's a very good question.
Well, what a fun question.
Yeah.
And I do just want to highlight again the way that I think of introversion and extroversion is different than how it's used in the general discourse, right? So, as we were talking about a few moments ago, all of us have both introverted and extroverted cognitive functions. We may have an introverted cognitive function that's a bit more dominant. It doesn't necessarily mean that we would struggle to relate emotionally or relationally with others. So I can tell you, for example, I have beautiful friendships with introverted feeling dominance, and it is the fact that they are introverted feelers that makes it such a wonderful connection for me, because I really appreciate how authentic they are. I really feel a sense that I really get to know them because they are able to share themselves. They are able to share their values through that introversion that they have.
But if you get attracted to another introverted personality and you're not the type that takes the first step, do you let fate play the part, or what happens here?
That's a great question. Well, so I think the question is really, I'm seeing
how would they communicate?
Right. I think that goes to skills building, I would say. I think there's an opportunity there to look at, have you cultivated your skills of your conversational skills? Have you cultivated your skills of connection? Because it is a skill to build connecting with other people. It is a skill to build, how do you open up and hold space for another person? Are you getting curious? Are you able to really listen deeply? Are you willing to open up and share about yourself? So I think, those are a couple of tips that I would point to there, is really leaning into emotional intelligence generally as a wonderful framework and sort of way to connect more effectively with others.
That was so well said, Coach. That was so relieving. We have a question here that says, if I'm introverted, does this mean there is more chance to fail in my relationships? I ask my partner questions and I don't know what's going on in his head sometimes.
Such an important question, and the short answer is absolutely not. Being more introverted does not mean that you're going to fail in your relationship. In fact, introversion, being sort of one who's more oriented toward one-on-one interaction can sometimes be correlated with being good at creating very close, intimate relationships, because you're not focused on everybody out there. You're able to focus on the one person. Now, I'm inferring...
Maybe the other side would take it as, oh, you're clingy, you're annoying, leave me alone, I'm a caveman, let me process it. So is it... they make you feel like you're doing wrong. So what do? You stop?
Well, I love this example that you use, because it brings in maybe some other factors that might be coming into play here. We talk about in the field of psychology, whether a person is more avoidant or more anxious.
Yeah, for example, he'd come back from work.
Yeah.
You can tell from their facial expressions that something is clearly wrong. They'll have lunch, literally go to the game room, and start playing their favorite game. And it would be your biggest sin if you go ask them what is wrong. And that's when the balloon blows. So what do you do? What do you do?
Yeah, no, it sounds like for sure some conversations need to happen in that case. For sure. Conversations need to happen.
How do you approach that conversational side? How do you make it healthy?
I love that. I think it all, again, comes back to building those emotional intelligence skills.
So you shouldn't surrender to the fact that that's the way they are. Just wait.
Well, I think it's really important to honor your own needs. If that's working for you, that your partner wants to go back and play video games, if that works for you, then that's one thing. If it's not working for you, if you're feeling disconnected, then for sure there's some work to be done, potentially on both sides. You, in terms of, if you're the person who's kind of looking over at your partner going to play video games, it's important for you to have perhaps some clarity about what you need to be happy in a relationship. Really naming those things you require to be happy. What is your picture of your ideal relationship? What would you like to have happen? And then also taking responsibility for the fact that your partner may not be able to read minds. Maybe they don't know what your needs are. And so you need to speak up. You need to speak up. You need to have have your boundaries, have your expectations, and communicate those clearly. And then potentially there's an opportunity for your partner as well to not only express their needs, but also maybe to have some more empathy for you and what you require. So I think it always starts with us. It always starts with us.
Yeah, just be patient. I hope things work out with the both of you without going through any hardship. Here's our final question. Hi, it's really interesting. Well, thank you. May I have some tips from Coach Katie of ways to overcome being an oversensitive person?
Well, and that's a beautiful question.
Should someone be blamed for being oversensitive person to begin with?
Absolutely not. Likely that sensitivity is also a gift in many ways. Oftentimes, when we talk about being sensitive, it can mean that we have much deeper awareness of a lot more than the average person does.
Yeah.
And I've, in so many cases, seen that be a huge asset, a really valuable, especially as a coach, that sensitivity means that I'm able to connect better. I'm able to be more aware of subtle information. So first, I think it's really important for you to look at how your sensitivity might in fact be a strength, and to name that and own that it may be a strength. Now, if there are things happening that are causing you not to enjoy your life in some ways because of that sensitivity, I think it's worth looking at where is that coming from? And you might need to get some help with that. You might consider working with a therapist who can support you to identify what is this. What are the dimensions of the sensitivity? What is it coming from? Is it something to do with past experiences that you've had related to trauma? Or is it just, a
part of his personality?
Yeah, a part of the personality that is just how you navigate the world. So two things there. First, to know that it is potentially a great strength, and second, to really examine where does it come from and maybe tap into some support to do that.
Well, you heard that from the best. Coach Katie, if you are an introvert, is there a chance that you will become an extrovert?
Very interesting question. Well, so our personalities really include both introverted and extroverted elements. All of us have both within us. And I'm of the school of thought that we actually have 4 sides to our mind. So where our ego may be led by an introverted function, necessarily another part of our mind would be led by the opposite. It could be that our unconscious is extroverted, where our ego is introverted. And so the more we develop ourselves, the more that we have more access to all of who we are, we will absolutely use introversion and extroversion in how we navigate the world.
That was great to share. Thank you so much, Coach Katie. I wish you the best of luck, and hopefully we can get to sit together and talk further about personality types really soon.
I would love that. This was so much fun, Huda. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Big thanks to you. Have a great day.